Hey there, it's author and attorney Kelly O'Connell with Knockout Radio, delivering podcasts today after July the 5th. And I wonder how many people, if you did a study, if you did a poll, how many people would actually know why we celebrate July the 4th in America? Probably be pretty low. Now, today's topic involves China and America and a little bit of help between the two, but first some weird news. Coming from nearby Fukushima, where we had the earthquake and the tsunami and everything, and it destroyed the nuclear power plant. Well, now we've got a new type of pig that's showing up, and these pigs are carrying 300 times as much radiation as they should be. And so are they turning into Godzilla of the hogs? No. Actually, the boars have come out of the mountains, the boars that live there, and they've come down to mate with the pigs that escaped from the farms after the earthquake and after the nuclear reactor fell apart. And so you've got radioactive wild boar pig hybrid emerging in the nuclear wasteland of Fukushima, and this is from Yahoo News, June 30th, 2021. And genetic study found that wild boar crossbred with domestic pigs escaped from local farms in areas deserted by humans after tsunami and earthquake triggered the 2011 crisis at Fukushima, displacing 160,000 people. For years, hunters have been tracking radioactive boar, numbering in the hundreds, and registered levels of the radioactive element cesium-137 300 times higher than the safe level. But there is no genetic mutations. Instead, they found that these pigs and boars are getting together. It's called a biological invasion, and it started after wild boar from surrounding mountains gradually moved down, as I was saying. The genetic sequence of 338 wild boar collected between 2006 and 2018 from across the region were analyzed. At least 18 boar displayed a so-called biological invasion of domestic pig genes. And here's the quotation: 18 boar phenotypically identified as wild boar had a European domesticated pig haplotype. Frequencies of this haplotype have remained stable since first detection in 2015. The result infers ongoing genetic pollution in wild boar populations from released domestic pigs. And they say that the pigs wouldn't make it on their own, but the boar-pig hybrids certainly can make it. So how's that for some weird news? All right. So today's podcast, why do liberals support China? Now, President Nixon supported China, and the presidents that came after him were sympathetic. We helped out China for a number of years with money, just giving them money. China knocked down the price of their yuan 10%, which gave them a huge advantage in international markets. Made their stuff cheaper, their junk cheaper. The government also put together a program that is still ongoing, which is to steal intellectual property. So companies would go to China because they could get their products made cheaper. They'd shut down their plants here, but then the Chinese government would steal the patents from these people, steal the intellectual property, and then would start making the same thing and sell it for less and put the companies out of business. It was a deal with the devil. So, question. After 6,000 years of human oppression, slavery, and tyranny, not long after this was put aside by publishing the Constitution and Bill of Rights, why are liberals now secretly aiding China's goals, and a lot of times they're doing it right out in the open? Why? Well, we know that 6,000 companies in the U.S. have direct ties to the Chinese Communist government. And so they're not just companies here, they're here to take over. And remember when Joe Biden was talking about the Chinese and he said, they're not bad folks. And that's after Joe had already lost his mind. All right. Remember this, even recently, we've had many examples of Americans aiding the Chinese, symbolized by Representative Eric Swallwell and his spy who came in from the couch, Fang Fang, who had given him many erotic bites. She helped him to get organized and get elected. She was a spy. When Nancy Pelosi found out about this, she let him stay on the foreign committee, the secret committee, the one that deals with issues of whatever the hell it's called, but you know what I'm saying. The committee that deals with secret information, he was allowed to stay on there. All right. So the Democrats don't stand for rectitude. They don't stand for safety. Dr. Fauci, the serial liar, was fibbing about giving China money to develop a weaponized virus. We know that he was invested somehow in China. We don't know all the details. Hopefully it'll come out someday. But he was defending China, the idea that they had created a weaponized virus, but really he was defending himself. All right. Now, when the Wuhan Lab was built, don't forget it was France who came to the Chinese and said, we want to build this virus lab in China and run it together with you so we can be on top of any world outbreaks. And the Chinese said, sure, come on. So the French came in and built the whole thing, state of the art. The only lab in China that had that level of ability to deal with these viruses. And the day it was finished, the Chinese kicked the French out. The French were furious. But what did they think was going to happen? You know, in China, the government and the science and the military and business, they're all the same thing. So why wouldn't they kick him out? So, and the French go around and wag their fingers in other people's faces, and they created this huge problem because now we know that the lab there was using viruses from bats brought in from Africa, living at the laboratory. And those bats had their coronaviruses taken out and weaponized, and that's what a bunch of people, 600,000 people in America died from. All right? That's because we're helping the Chinese when we shouldn't be. Now, only a few decades ago, President Clinton allowed L'Oreal Space to build rockets in China. He waived the ban on that. And you know what happened? Magically, China's own rockets went from 90% failure to 90% success. How did that happen? Well, they stole the intellectual property, and L'Oreal had donated already to Clinton's election campaign $1 million. So Hunter Biden being over in China and being given $1 billion by the Chinese government for a hedge fund is not shocking. It's not anything new, but it's still disturbing. Now, in the meantime, the NBA was fighting against criticism of Hong Kong, realizing that their big new market was in China. The Chinese people love basketball. And so when the Hong Kong transition back to tyranny was criticized, high school graduate LeBron James got up and, you know, the guy thinks that he's an international statesman, and he criticized the people that were doing the criticism, and he said, you have no right to do that. You shouldn't. You're creating a lot of harm. You don't know what you're doing. So LeBron James is in favor in America of BLM, in kneeling, and is constantly saying that black people suffer from racism, from the government, institutional racism. What in the hell do you think would happen if LeBron James was in China and tried to do that? Well, he's already come out and said he will not allow it. He won't allow anybody to criticize China. Why? Because these people are hypocrites and morons. Nike, which came from an area that I used to live in, Beaverton, and I used to live in Cedar Mill, which is not too far from Beaverton, before or around the time that Nike was getting off the ground. And Nike has grown to be so gigantic, and the owner of Nike, the head of Nike, the Phil Knight, said, we love China and we're totally devoted to China. So, sounds like he's more devoted to China than he is the U.S. In any event, I'm asking why. What is the thinking here? And I've got some ideas for you. And I think that they make a lot of sense based on some deep issues here. All right. Now just follow me here. What do leftists in this country believe in? If you get into a talk with them, they'll eventually say they believe in socialism. Not very few are going to say they're Marxist, they're communist, right? Say that they believe in socialism. Well, socialism comes out of the same group of Paris communists or communal people, these people that were getting together after the French Revolution to write and try to make a better world. And you know, the same people that believed in socialism, like Marx, also believed in communism, and they believed that it was capitalism, and then socialism, and then communism, and then benign anarchy, nihilism. So, one reason that the people in this country on the left are sympathetic to China is because they really believe the same thing, because the Chinese are followers of Marx. The American leftists, the liberals, the socialists, the progressives, they're also followers of Marx. So there's a lot of sympathy there, even if they can't talk about it. Number two, I propose that there's a lot of hatred in leftism, and it's out there all the time now. Hatred of America, a criticism of American history, and that we were unfair to slaves, which by definition is true, but that this country, even though we killed 600,000 or 700,000 people in a civil war to end slavery, they never talk about that. But they say there's still institutional racism out there, and America needs to be broken and reformed. But it's along the lines of leftism, the same idea, the same socialism, communism, out of the Frankfurt School that comes out of Germany. So there needs to be punishment, and so they're in favor of that. So that makes them sympathetic to China. 3, this may be the most important motivation, believe it or not. It's the idea that they're secretly in touch with reality. And this is what is a dominating thought to all of these people. They're in touch with reality. They're smarter. They're enlightened. They're elites, in other words. And they're also Gnostics. In other words, they're going to be saved, and they're going to save humanity not through faith. They're going to save him through knowledge, what we were just talking about. Gnosticism is salvation through knowledge. So that's a deep reason to identify. And there's something sexy, there's something fun about it, and sarcastic and condescending. You see how these people communicate with others who don't agree with them. They treat them as morons, as imbeciles. And they pretend, because they know they're in the minority, as any elite would be, any elite group is going to be in the minority. They pretend to believe in the same things, but deep down they're laughing. That is the number one characteristic. Sarcasm. Being holier than thou, holier than Mao. Being part of a group that's going to save the world, and it's not through religion, it's through humanism. All right, so they're building a larger community, and this is a wonderful feeling too, so that makes them sympathetic. Again, they're going to save the world. They're going to bring peace on earth. They're going to bring a commune, a giant commune, and create a global government that doesn't favor anybody, that equally distributes all food and materials, housing. That draws them into this fight too. Now, there is one other thing that I thought of. See what you think of it. I believe there's a demented and sexual fixation of oppressing the weaker group. They see the average person, the man on the street, as being a weaker member of the species. They're less powerful. They're less articulate. They're dumber. There's this movement around, this very perverse movement. It's involved in porn, but it's also involved in these, 50 Shades of Grey? There's a lot of perversion now, and I think that when these people are fighting and lying and tricking the people that are opposed to them, there's also kind of a sexual pleasure. That's just my impression. And then what's the last thing? The last thing is personal interest, because the Faucis, the LeBron James, the Eric Swallwells, all these people, the Pelosi's, all these people that are sympathetic or going up to bat for the Chinese also have a personal interest in this. So all of those things, I believe, explain why the left is fighting for China. Now, I said this on my podcast from this morning, and this is obviously going to be played tomorrow, but let's make a solemn vow that we will no longer sit back silently as haters trash our incredible history and country. Instead, let's all get together, and each day we'll all do a little bit of research on the history of America, on the definitions of capitalism, on Washington and Lincoln and the founding fathers and all this stuff, all these subjects. And the next time you hear America get criticized, or our way of life, capitalism, our history, the Bill of Rights, the Constitution, we stand up and we push back with facts. What do you think? All right, Kelly O'Connell, thank you so much for tuning in. It was wonderful to hang out with you for a little while. And a little bit over 15 minutes. Hope you have a great day. Remember to resist China. They're communists. Ciao. Oh, and by the way, if you can, subscribe, and let's keep building this movement here. Have a good day. Bye-bye.